we'd like to thank the following sponsors.
Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of all of us at the National Glass Association, thank you for making time in your busy day to join us for this month's installment of Thirsty Thursday, the glass evidence for a second shooter in Dallas, featuring Chris Berry. On the next slide, you'll see NGA's Glassfield Connect is underway. This is 22 days of content organized by daily themes and product showcases across all industry segments. September is for solutions. We hope you'll join us there and visit glassfield.com to attend and also register for free. On the next slide, I'm pleased to introduce our speaker, Chris Berry. Chris is an engineering consultant with more than 50 years experience in flat glass manufacturing, including 45 years with Pilkington NSG LOF. He has experience in fabrication, design, and customer service for both commercial and residential installations. Chris is currently practicing in fractographic examination of broken, in-service, annealed, heat-treated, and insulating glass. Chris has presented papers and webinars globally and is also very active in ASTM EO6 glass strength committees. Chris, I'll let you take it from here.
Thank you. I'll go to the story here that really didn't start out as a story. It started out as an ordinary day's work and turned into something rather strange. I was in Washington at the Smithsonian helping them with another very interesting one that documents the Declaration of Independence, and the documents of the Constitution were sealed up in old thermopane double glazed units more than 50 years ago. They were starting to show their age, and the Smithsonian had a big meeting. There must have been 40, 50 people there. I was one of them, and how were they going to open these old double glazed units and take out these priceless, irreplaceable, one-of-a-kind documents and put them in new protective cases? So I was a small cog in a big wheel there. But at the end of the day, somebody decided that I knew a little about glass, and they talked to me after the meeting and said, we have some cracked glass here. Would you help us move it? It's down in the basement. We want to move it to another part of the building without running any of the cracks. And I said, well, come on, I've come all the way from Toledo, Ohio to Washington, D.C. to talk about the Declaration of Independence, and you want me to move cracked glass? And they said, yes, but it's a very important piece of glass. Well, I said, just handle it very carefully. It'll be no problem. When are you going to move it? They're going to move it in a few weeks' time. Well, I can't make a trip just to help the cracked piece of glass. And then they told me that it was the Kennedy windshield from the Dallas shooting. And I said, oh, that changes everything. I will be there. And a few weeks later, I turned up to help move the cracked piece of glass, hoping he wouldn't crack any further. And what happened was pretty ordinary. We went down into the basement. There were only a handful of us. I had my Irish passport in my hip pocket in case anybody wanted ID. And down we went into the dark recesses of the Smithsonian. There's a lot more stuff down below ground than is up on show up top. If you can get a chance to go underground, it's quite something. So they showed me the windshield, and there it was standing up on its edge, on its long edge. And I looked at it and saw the crack. And then I couldn't believe my eyes. The crack seemed to be on the front of the windshield, on the forward side. And there was no crack on the back. And I looked around, and nobody thought there was anything strange about that. So I didn't ask permission, because if you ask permission down there, the immediate answer is no. So I just put my hand in my pocket and pulled out a wooden toothpick, and I touched the crack on the windshield. And the front side, the side the windshield wipers work on, was cracked and broken. The inner side, there was nothing. There was no even beginning of the hole of a Hertzian cone. There might have been a little mark of something. As it turns out, there was a little mark from lead rub there, but no breakage whatsoever. And even I knew that the gunman had fired from behind. So if glass was broken, surely it was the interior glass ply, the glass facing the passengers and the driver should have broken, or both plies together broken, but not the outer ply. And that immediately just shouted to me, this glass has been broken by being impacted from the front, from the railway overpass, from the grassy knoll, all these conspiracy theories that even I had heard about 20 years ago. They couldn't get out of my mind. So removed the glass. I didn't say anything to anyone. They said anything to me. Removed it successfully. The cracks didn't grow, and I went back to Toledo, Ohio. On the way back, changing planes in Cincinnati, who should I meet on the last plane that snowy night? It was Rod Baker, who was the windshield expert with LOF in Toledo. And he was on his way back to Toledo also. And I said, Rod, you're a very straightforward, honest man. He said, yes, indeed. Have you ever seen cracked windshields? Yes, I have examined 143 of them. And I said, Rod, have you ever seen a windshield cracked where the impact was on the other side, on the side opposite the impact, not on the impact? And he said, nope, never. I said, thank you, Rod. Now I'm getting really curious. How could this glass have broken other than by the grassy knoll, second gunman, the railway overpass, whatever? But I knew the answer would be easy. I went home to the library, asked for a copy of the Warren report that I knew was an in-depth study of it. And our local library, which is a very good library, there are lots and lots of books. And I said, Kennedy assassination. They pointed me to a bookshelf, long bookshelf, full of books of conspiracy theories. Every book on the subject except the Warren report. And looking at those books is rather scary stuff, because they showed a lot of stories about people who investigated the whole shooting looking for deeper reasons. And the people either stop writing, turn up dead, or just disappear off the face of the earth. Well, I went out to an out-of-town library, a little library 20 miles out in the country, and got a copy of the Warren report. And that was very nice. That was in-depth. They looked and showed me what I wanted, full detail. And then at the very end of it, there was, or not the end of it, almost the back third of it, is a section on other theories, other possibilities that may have happened. And they say in the Warren report that speculations maintain that shots came from both the railroad overpass and the Texas School Book Depository building behind the car. So now we're cooking, now we're getting there. But they also said that all those assertions have been carefully examined and dismissed. So they pointed out that there was a small round bullet hole in the front windshield. This is evidence that shots were fired at the president from the front of the car. And the commission found that that doesn't matter at all, because glass breaks in tension. If you push on glass, the surface you're pushing on goes into compression and the far side goes into tension, and the glass breaks in tension on the other side of the impact. And I say, yes, but we got laminated glass here. If that was the case, one or both sides should be breaking from the impact. And there was no damage at all on the passenger side. So now I'm thinking they don't even bother discussing the fact that it is laminated glass. So now I'm getting really suspicious that here comes the cover up. And so I did the only thing I could do. I phoned a lawyer in Toronto and said, what do I do? I'm uncovering perhaps something nasty here. And he said, just write everything down. Okay, keep going and write everything down. And then I decided, well, I would do some testing. So I went to LOF and have you got any old windshields? Well, they, as you can imagine, have quite a few old windshields. I took them home to my basement. And that weekend, a friend of mine, physicist friend of mine from Rochester was coming to stay. And I said, Don, I need a witness on this. You look at this, I'm going to do a simulation. So I set up the windshield. There's the cross section of the windshield. I went to my local wonderful hardware store that sells everything from chains to dump trucks to muzzle loading bullets. I got bits of lead. I got a heavy duty slingshot. I set the glass up in my basement and I fired a piece of lead that was roughly the equivalent of a part of a bullet fragment at the passenger side glass. I would call surface number 1, 2, 3, 4. But I hit it, and boy, have you ever tried firing slingshot lead at glass in your basement? Make sure you're hiding behind the column. They go ding dong, bounces around. Fortunately, didn't hit my real windows, but there was no fracture. So I said, well, obviously we need to try a little harder. So I got a slightly larger lead fragment and I pulled the slingshot back at a greater extension and with a higher velocity, both plies of glass fractured, not unsurprising. So I still haven't been able to explain what I saw in the Smithsonian. So I got an intermediate piece of lead and pulled the slingshot back with an intermediate extension, fired at the passenger side of the glass, and it pushed on the glass, made a little lead smear, actually, if you look very, very carefully, bent the glass, bent the PVB, bent the outer glass, and an outer glass fracture started out here. Or it wasn't so much at the surface, it was all the outer ply was fractured. And so there you had it. If you had the right weight of lead and the right velocity, hit one side, the other side will break. And so in simple terms, will glass with a crack break? Well, yes, it will. It waited, it didn't break all the time, the cracks didn't run afterwards, but the conclusion was quite simple, that there was no front surface impact, no conspiracy. The Warren Commission findings are correct, even though they neglect to give a detailed description of the laminated glass. And the cracked glass did not break for 30 years more because it wasn't stressed. And so we can all sleep easy in our beds at night, knowing that there is no second gunman rating behind the grassy knoll or at the railroad overpass. And this one, anyway, maybe for something else, but not this one. So all for nothing. So the story is there's no story. That's it.
If anyone has questions for Chris, we would be glad to field those. We'd also like to call your attention to an upcoming presentation at the end of the month. This is an exciting and special collaboration with Architectural Record featuring There's a Glass for That. We hope you will tune in to hear an interesting discussion about unique and innovative ways that glass is being used in architectural and a variety of applications. Thanks very much for your time, Chris, and thanks for attending the session.
You're very welcome. Thank you.